the backpack. Mark Fox has been a bomb tech for the Spokane Sheriff's Office for 18 years. He sends in a remote-controlled bomb disposal robot to investigate the backpack.
That way we can look at it a little bit more closely and inspect it to try to determine what it actually is. When we were examining it, we saw like lots of flows and stuff.
You see the wires? There was an automotive-type fuse visible on the outside, so it was like, this is not normal. There was something covered in fabric, like athletic tape, the wires went inside, but we're starting to see at least some parts of what you can see in ID. The wires, I think we're more thinking of exposed wires, something that could be remote, detonated, if it were device.
At this point, the bomb squad stops down and works with Spokane police to extend the matter out even further.
We get whoever has the controller far enough away. And we also called in a dog to dog search the immediate area. Anytime you deal with a device, there's always a possibility of having a secondary or tertiary device as well.
The vicinity is cleared for secondary devices. We'll try and get a better look at the contents of the backpack.
We identified what we thought was a power supply, a battery. And we're very concerned at this point.
The job for the robot is made more difficult by the amount of tape and fabric used to hold the device together. The squad elects to disrupt the device with a water shot from the robot.
We usually try to preserve what we can preserve for evidence. I mean, obviously our safety is the primary concern, but after that, our next concern is collecting evidence.
And that was successful. Then we continued to recon after that shot, looking around, okay, now we can see much more of the device.
The wires and t-shirts are more exposed, but the tape is still obscuring the actual device.
We did reach a point where we could go no further. It was just too intricate of a detailed operation to do with the robot. And at that point, I had to suit up Mark and send him down the range to finish what we call the redder safe procedure.
Mark Fox, dressed in a bomb disposal suit, approaches the device.
When I first started, the first couple of times I went on a device, I thought, you know what, this thing could go off. I kind of made my peace with my God, I trust my training. So that's kind of where I'm at as a bomb tech. You have the skills and you have the training, and you gotta make your peace and let your training take over and take you where you need to.
Bomb suits offer players protection, but a large blast can still be lethal.
And it was clear at that point in ID. We knew what it was. We knew that this was a very significant event, and that as we got into a little bit more depth of what the device was, that it was catastrophic had it gone off.
Mark carefully examines the IED and begins to disassemble the device.
After the initiator and stuff, so I got those wires, separated everything out.
With the device rendered safe, the true reality of what it's capable of comes to light.
This particular device was more directional. The way that it was positioned, the parade was supposed to go right by there, so you can get line where the people lie. If they're walking and the device goes off, a section across them, you're going to have a lot of casualties.
The FBI is briefed on the initial findings at the scene.
The assumption was this was a terrorism event, so just based on the situation, once the device was rendered safe, we could march station. And myself, the other members of the GCPF, began processing the scene.
Joseph Harrington was the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Washington and is an expert on domestic terrorism.
The way the investigators proceeded was to try to eliminate the number of suspects down to a person or persons that may have been responsible for planning this backpack bomb.
We interviewed well over 100 individuals who were at the march, and no one took a person signed.
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
And the device had been disrupted by the water cannon, and the backpack had been tipped over, and the contents had been knocked loose. So that I could see, as I was on my hands and knees with other agents, picking up what looked like fishing weights that had spilled out. And they were green, they were fishing weights that covered the green substance, and it's sticky, and it smells terrible. So I got on that night, and checked it out, and it smells.
The evidence is brought back to the FBI office in Spokane and photographed independently before being sent to the FBI lab in Quantico, Virginia for further examination.
As we analyzed them, and that evening in the office, as an individual or group with tremendously evil intent, had constructed and placed a very specific device in the path where marchers were massed to inflict mass casualty and grievous injury or in death upon source. What was so striking about this event was there was no pre-attack indicator. No
இந்த மேட்ச் என்ன கத்தியா
The evidence collected on the parade route had been sent to the FBI Quantico lab. Their report reveals multiple pieces of evidence.
Some of those items there's also a car opener, remote control device, including fishing weights.
Findings from the lab also reveal the source of the green substance coating 128 quarter-ounce fishing weights found on the scene.
The suspect had taken fishing weights.
மேல வேணும்
Marshall to encapsulating rat poison and fecal matter. The rat poison is an anticoagulant. The fecal matter, of course, would cause infection. The suspect is trying to shoot these projectiles into the crowd in hopes that the counter-fishing weights
இதே இருக்கான் பாருங்க
the person lead out trying to cause as much pain and suffering as good into a crowd of children, families just out there marching on to celebrate a person.
ஏய்
Not only had the car dozens of folks would have been on the
Even though it appears to be crude, it takes a certain
technical prowess to be able to construct the device.
The investigation now focuses on potential leads and witnesses.
We were contacting individuals who
Oh,
could have been responsible, but they not been able to.
With no human intel, the agents hope that leads come from the device itself.
All we had really was the evidence taken at the scene of the device itself and the components of the device. We're going to try to source where all these components came from.
அடிச்சுட்டானா ஐயோ
Where did the backpack come from? What are these t-shirts?
ஐயோ அடிச்சுட்டான்
Okay, where did you purchase these items? Maybe.
வாண காப்பன வாண அடினா
Spread out to the surrounding areas.
அடினா அவனுக்கு அடினா எனக்கு ரிவே பண்ண உள்ள அவன
We started in Spokane. We went to
ஆனா உள்ள அவன ரிவே பண்ண
numerous big art ranging stores where we could find these fishing weights and these batteries.
அவன அடினா விட்டான அடினா
We went far
என்ன அடி
south.
ஐயோ
We went east in Idaho.
Help.
We made it down to the Tri-Cities area toward Oregon.
நேடா போட்டானே
The device. One tip came from the t-shirts. There were 3 or 4 t-shirts in the backpack. And one of the t-shirts talked about a school north of
சரி வெள்ளவன
and talked about a fun one. So give us an idea of this is red herring or the subject may have some
ஒரு
information.
ஒருத்தனை கொண்டன மீதி 2 பேரும் வந்தாங்க
If you want to be off the grid, around Colville is a great visit.
Colville is a city in Stevens County, Washington, an area about 60 miles north of Spokane. Following the lead on the t-shirts, investigators visit shops in the area.
Bring up voice chat.
Agent named Craig Noyes.
Bring up
created a
voice
car
chat.
store in Colville. And his assignment was to look for as many 6-volt batteries as he could with the same manufacturing code that matched the 2 batteries.
Bring up voice
The
chat.
batteries are a match.
After some additional workup,
பேசவா
that they were manufactured in China, and they were somewhere upwards of maybe 10,000 of these batteries with this serial number.
பேசவா
Bring up voice chat.
While it was a lead, it wasn't a huge significant lead.
He then
Yeah.
went to the Walmart in Colville.
என்னடா அங்க சண்டை போட்டு இருக்க கண்ணுல அது கிடைக்காதுடா
Fishing weights, the quarter ounce fishing weights that we had.
புரியல
And they actually
கண்ணுல இது கிடைக்காது இப்ப பேன் வச்சு அடிக்கணும்
Was just through gumshoe police work.
ஏய் கேம் ஓட
Ended up finding
கேம்ல தான் இருக்கேன்
that were similar to or
ஒண்ணல இங்க போன்
backpack. And that was a
Yeah,
significant
yeah.
event because now we found similar fishing weights that sold in, of course, the area where the t-shirts were from.
With 3 significant pieces of evidence, the t-shirts, batteries, and fishing weights originating from the same area, the FBI concentrated their efforts on Walmart.
We got a subpoena to the store, and the store provided us some sales records from 2 months before the event occurred.
This was all the records of 20 stores in Idaho, Eastern Washington, and Western Montana, looking for any time they sold more than 20 fishing weights at a time of those quarter ounce weights. And got back to us and said, well, there was 3 times we sold a number that higher. It all happened in the Colville store within 1 week in November of 2010. We found out that on November 1st, somebody had purchased 30 fishing weights at Marshall. Unfortunately, they used cash to make the purchase, and unfortunately, the cameras were down that day. So there was no videotape and no financial record of who made that purchase. We also found out
Yeah.
that somebody went back and bought 60 more fishing weights. Again, they paid cash. If they paid cash, we don't know who that person is. We were a little disappointed, you could say. However, we also found out soon thereafter that on the 7th of November, somebody came back and bought 40 more fishing weights. And they also bought Marshall. This time, I purchased a debit card. So armed with the debit card purchase, we were able to track through these subpoena who the cardholder was that made that last purchase of fishing weights and Marshall Crane. And those great results back in the subpoena. Now the name. It was Kevin Hartman of Colville.
And that was a huge event because now we have a name, and you gotta remember, the day this event occurred, there were an unlimited number of suspects. The FBI then started to do more and more investigation.
Armed with a name, intelligence assets seek to find out more about Kevin Hartman.
Did a deep dive on Kevin Hartman. We did a lot of public source searching. We found out he was in the military. He was a member of the Army for 3.5 years. He was stationed in Fort Lewis. He had IMARS in high school. And he went on to get a certificate being. As we further investigated Kevin Hartman, we found he was not married, never been married, was born and raised north of Colville in the Washington area. Interesting enough, we also found that even though he's buying 130 fishing weights, he doesn't have a fishing license, which is unique.
By most accounts, 36-year-old Kevin Hartman seems to live a pretty mundane existence, but investigators soon uncover a secret identity.
And determined that at one point, Mr. Hartman, using the moniker Joe Snuffy, had revealed his real identity.
Joe Snuffy had replied to admin requests for his real name. Investigators are able to access that post online.
As we delved further into Kevin Hartman's online personality, we found that there had been on separate websites, especially the Battlegrounds network. Joe Snuffy posted over 900 times about white supremacy, white separatists, movements, his hatred for interracial marriages. His mindset. He talked about stockpiling weapons, stockpiling food, talking about the collapse of the government. So we thought this might be a good lead. This could be somebody we should look for.
A viable suspect with ties to white supremacy who purchased 3 of the same items found in an explosive device has been identified. But it's still not enough.
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
He has been detected by the FBI. So we establish a 24/7 surveillance regimen.
Our fear was he was going to come back and do a multiply church treatment. It's good enough. So if he was going to come back in Spokane, we're going to
I need a weapon.
unprobable cause.
Missing piece, as always, is being able to put him at the scene of the bombing. We have been buying fishing weights, but we can't connect it to the background.
The FBI receives news from the lab in Quantico regarding additional evidence.
Form up on me.
Determined to create FBI lab work, and again, this goes back to the great work that Spokane launched. To recover fragments of a green piece of DNA from the handle of the back.
The DNA discovery is a critical break in the case, but Hartman has never been convicted of a felony and has no DNA on file. The FBI must devise a plan to acquire it by other means.
The FBI knew that Kevin Hartman had served in the military, and we were also aware that the military maintains what we call biological samples for the identification of soldier remains.
Acquiring DNA from the blood samples one provides as a military member. It has only been done 3 times ever. It is very difficult to overcome. It requires Secretary of Defense approval.
So we reached out to the Department of Defense to see if we could get a sample of Kevin Hartman's DNA. They were cooperative and said they couldn't do that without a court order. I put together a motion, requested the court order a motion, and issued an order. The district court judge here in Eastern District of Washington approved the motion and signed the order. And so we presented that order to the Department of Defense back in Maryland.
Thanks to the hard work by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the headquarters, the Department of Defense did provide a comparison sample of Kevin Hartman's DNA, which was then brought to the FBI lab.
With a sample of Kevin Hartman's DNA at the FBI lab, the agents are now hoping for a match.
Excellent work.
The FBI lab in Quantico matched the DNA that was found in the backpack to Kevin Hartman's DNA from his biological sample when he was in the military.
With the DNA match, the investigation now switches from who did this to, okay, Kevin's our subject, how did we get him tested safely?
The FBI has the green light to make an arrest, but have serious concerns. After conducting 24/7 surveillance on Hartman, they determined that a breach on the house could be too dangerous.
Kevin Hartman lived in a remote area of Stevens County on a large, I believe it was a 10-acre parcel. Given the nature and circumstances of this case, there was a concern for the personal safety of the FBI agents themselves.
Mr. Hartman did not leave that cabin for virtually any reason. In fact, he posted online about his ability to live on $50 a month and make bulk purchases at big warehouse stores. He really stayed in this cabin, this mountainside cabin, and spewed his own toxic spew of racial ideology.
There was fear of possible standoff with Mr. Hartman, and we not like that.
The risks of subjects like these have a long history of ending badly for a lot of people, and we're acutely aware of that at the time. We involved the HRT, as it's known, from the very early days, once we identified Hartman as a subject, once we saw where he lived, once we knew that he was armed to the teeth.
The FBI reached out to the HRT, the FBI's hostage rescue team, to figure out the logistics of making the arrest.
Cases like these, they're this high profile, we usually bring in a national asset like the hostage rescue team. They're the best of the best. We didn't want to risk anything going bad or sideways. They can deploy snipers and observers and watch Kevin for 7 days to get a pattern of life and safely decide when and where to effect the arrest.
Once the HRT are deployed, they observe Hartman's every move.
They borrowed construction gear and equipment from Stevens County, which is the county involved in, and they set up a work site, which allowed them to move people in and out of the area without being noticed. HRT told us, if you can ruse him out safely, that's the best bet. We don't want to do an assault on my house if we can. It's safest to ruse a subject out.
The FBI has Hartman in their sights.
Choo-choo! All aboard! Next stop, the safe zone.
To take him into custody while avoiding a barricade or shootout.
We began to try to get a pattern of life for what he did every day. We gave orders to monitor his internet protocol traffic and his phone traffic. We couldn't get his contents. We didn't have file free warrant. But we could see when he called, the numbers called into him, and the websites he visited. And with that, we could pretty much understand what he did during the day. We found out that he got up around 9 in the morning. He was streaming music.
Watch out!
And search Craigslist, looking for a
Choo-choo! All aboard! Next stop, the safe zone.
He knew where
Form up on me.
The noose was tightening, and the circle of investigative web was originally going to center on him. At least that's what I think. He was looking for a car, 4-wheel drive vehicle in the wintertime in the north, to drive to Canada. We keyed off that, we learned that, and designed a fake advertisement.
We did that by posting Craigslist ads, similar to the cars he was trying to buy. We just mimicked his type of car at his price point, and used that basically as a demo to call, well, being to call our ad, not somebody else's. Thankfully, Kevin actually sent an email to our ad and saying, my name's Kevin Hartman, I live on the call bill, here's my number, I'm interested in buying a vehicle, can I call you tomorrow? Once we received the nibble from Kevin, we thought, okay, fish on, we might have something here. We had an agent in our office in Orloza, Agnes Peggy, who was the person selling the vehicle, called Kevin and said, yes, the car's still for sale, and we're interested, we need at the Costco
Watch out.
Spokane tomorrow. Is there anything special we discussed that much? And Kevin said, yes, on my way, I'll be there. So, we're saying, okay, Norman, that's great, we're kind of giving your hand signs, okay, we have what we need.
Hello, am I speaking with Kevin?
This is Peggy. I got your email about my car.
Okay. Are you going to be able to look at it tomorrow?
I work tomorrow, but I can slip out probably around 10 minutes. Would that be okay with you?
That would probably work.
Okay.
I live away from there. It's up here in Caldwell.
Oh, okay.
So, it takes me about an hour to get to Spokane.
Okay, well, I'm in Morrisville. Is that enough?
Norman can I have the phone? Kevin just kept talking and talking. We laughed later that Norman was a lone wolf, but he was a very lonely wolf.
By the end of the call, Hartman agrees to meet Peggy at a Costco parking lot in North Spokane the following day. The HRT are notified and begin to plan how to safely execute his arrest. The next day, the HRT wait for Kevin Hartman to leave his house, while other members of the team mobilize at a makeshift construction site, waiting for him to cross their path.
Form up on me.
HRT
Form up on me.
Getting into his vehicle as he proceeded down. Found his vehicle. The HRT operators, dressed as construction workers, were trying to look busy, and Kevin drove by the vehicle, which is being driven by a HRT operator. The front loader then slowly began to follow Kevin as they proceeded down the road toward the highway.
The HRT blocked the road with construction equipment right before the entrance of the highway.
There was a HRT operator named Stop Go sign. Kevin stopped at the sign, and the operator said, "Will you window down, please?" And turn your engine off, please. And Kevin did. The operator said, "Just give me a minute, we're going to get smooth, and you can proceed on the way." At that point, the operator walked behind a large white van, which was parked on the side of the road, about 30 yards from Kevin Hartman. That was a sign for a HRT operator to detonate 2 flashbangs, which had been buried in the dirt next to Kevin's passenger window. On the explosion, it was a very loud bang, very bright lights, and it seemed to affect Kevin. He was a bit concussed. That was a signal for 6 HRT operators to get out of the white van that's parked near Kevin and open the door and pull him from the vehicle and safely arrest him. As soon as the explosion was detonated, the front loader, which was the HRT operator, took the scoop, the tail of the loader, and he smashed it on the trunk.
Form up on me. Marked a location.
Regained his wits. His vehicle was lifting in the air as the front loader was pushing it down from the trunk.
He was taken totally by surprise, in shock, and unarmed.
Custody, and that's put on the radio. Agent Butler and I proceeded to the scene and took custody of Mr. Hartman. First thing he said was, "These people are trying to kill me. Can you save me?" And I told Kevin, "Yes, we're from the FBI, and we're here to help you. You're going to be okay now." He was very shaken, very scared, but he was safe. He was fine.
The FBI arrests Hartman just 6.5 weeks after the bomb had been discovered. The investigation now turns to charging Hartman, and search warrants are executed for his residence and other locations he's associated with.
Once Kevin Hartman was safely in custody, HRT then proceeded to his cabin. They had brought bomb sex in as well. House for any type of device would trap. And safely so kids to safe house.
They don't find the bomb factory they were expecting, but
after the search of Kevin Hartman's house, several agents went to his father's house. It was clear from just stepping foot inside his father's shop that this is where Kevin Hartman built the device. We found the remote control car starter, which Kevin was going to use as a detonating device. We saw the pipe that he's cut in half. We saw rat poison, similar to the rat poison that was recovered at the scene. The wood, he built the wood box and placed the device inside the box. The wood matched. It was clear that this is where Kevin Hartman built the bomb.
the FBI lab also reports on items found in Hartman's cabin.
We collected tools, including pliers and screwdrivers. The FBI lab analyzed tool marks from the improvised explosive device to the tools we used.
Smells really bad down here.
And some pliers that the FBI's lab identified as being found at Kevin's residence to the print marks on the wires found on the
The search at his house wasn't that fruitful. However, there was one item of interest that was located at his house. It was a digital camera, and he had deleted all photos off the camera, but our tech agents in Seattle were able to pull them out from the deleted files, and on that camera were pictures of him basically taking selfies of himself at the march, him marching in March, and him taking pictures of basically his antenna charts. There's one photo that we recovered from Hartman's digital camera that was chilling, to say the least. It was a photo that Kevin took of an African-American family, a mother with 3 children, standing by a statue of Lieutenant Colonel Mike Anderson, who's an astronaut, who's a Spokane native, and he died in the Columbia explosion. This family standing there by the statue, smiling, getting ready for the parade to start. And there's
Excellent work.
to see basically his mindset. That these are the people I want to kill. It really sends a chill through your spine.
In a strange twist, soon after Hartman is arrested and his face appears on the news, the FBI receive a call from a woman who marched in a parade.
And she said, "I took photos of my children and my niece, and I have a photo with Mr. Hartman in the background like that." And it was amazing to see because it's basically the reverse of Kevin Hartman's photos. Kevin Hartman is lurking in the background. Again, the two close together, and it's a chill through your spine. It's scary how close it came to be tragedy. And innocent people like that, innocent children,
very, very disturbing. I recall those photographs, and he had sort of a sinister smile on his face.
He was proud of himself for being in
Watch out! Enemies ahead!
And what he planned to do clearly was
Form up on me.
1,000 feet back, 500 feet back, way out of the zone of lethality. He was carrying with him a camera that could do great video shots too, in order to take trophy images and video that he would later likely use in the circle of white supremacists that are willing to commit that kind of violence. We don't know what Hartman was going to do with it. What was clear, though, is that he was joining the march and gleefully almost in these pictures, capturing images of those he intended to maim.
With all of the evidence collected against Hartman, U.S. Attorney Joe Harrington is set to go to trial.
We were prepared to go to trial, and we've been working diligently for many months since the day of the event. Witnesses were lined up as the U.S. Attorney's Office. We were prepared. I'm confident that we had enough proof to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and we were prepared to go. Kevin Hartman advised me Kevin wanted to hear him plead guilty.
A week before his trial, Hartman pleads guilty to a hate crime and an attempt to mass destruction.
Kevin Hartman was charged with attempted terrorism counts against during the Geary March, I think we have to acknowledge that conduct, and that's why it was important to charge a hate crime. But it was also an act of terrorism, clearly. Thank goodness the IED didn't go off, because there would have been mass casualties.
Harpoon, a lone wolf, had found his voice online where a willing and captive audience encouraged his hateful posts. A lone actor like Harpoon in a terrorist plot is a difficult challenge for law enforcement.
Kevin was the typical lone wolf. I hate to use that term because it sort of glorifies the position, but Kevin was a loner. The difficulty with a lone wolf is just identifying them before any sort of significant act occurs.
Kevin Harper presented for us, at that time, one of the most vexing types of cases to solve. He was an individual actor who didn't presage the event in any way. He didn't express to anyone his intent to do this. There was no indicator of this evil intent. There were some flaws in his plan, but not many. And so it was an incredibly taxing investigation from that perspective.
And this device detonated like Kevin Harper planned. This would have been more deadly than the Boston attack. He practiced this. He detonated a few months before. He used paper targets. He knew what he was doing. And he wanted to cause as much mayhem and death and destruction as he could. And he would have been very successful. It would have just been like a war zone had that bomb detonated like he did.
It's impossible to say what made Kevin Harper. He appeared to have a relatively normal upbringing in a rural environment, but at some point he became steeped in white supremacist ideology, racial separatism, and then gradually evolved into this cocoonish existence where the perfect blend, the unfortunate blend of ignorance, of hate, and fear stewed together to form this evil killer. And that's what he was. An evil, cowardly killer who was willing to join the march and videotape the slaughter of women and children.
The FBI lab rebuilds his bomb to test its strength and videotapes the results.
On the video, the FBI lab put a metal filing cabinet several yards away from the device, and when it detonated, those fishing weights perforated both sides of the metal cabinet and continued to fly on. There were trees hundreds of yards away, and those fishing weights actually hit the trees.
To me, it kind of looked like a swarm of bees, basically, going at a very fast rate and penetrating a bunch of mannequins. So obviously they would have had some fatalities there.
8 months after the sentencing of Harden, Agent Cleary visits him in prison, hoping he'll be able to clear up some unanswered questions.
In November of 2017, myself and Detective J.C. Collins went to Lone Oak Federal Correctional Facility and interviewed Kevin Harper. He is no longer represented by attorney and he was willing to talk to us.
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
On the day of the event, he said he got there about 2 hours early. He parked about a mile and a half away from the march, and he was wearing full disguise. He also wears a beard, so he put on sunglasses, a different hat, a different jacket, and he took back with the bomb in it. And he said he put several t-shirts in the back, basically hide on the sharp corners of the device, made a soft roundabout routes through the car park to get a great route. He went back to his vehicle, shaved his beard in his car, changed his clothes, waited until about 9:30, and then came back, a different route, after the march. And as he approached the march area and saw that there was commotion in a few police cars, at that point he realized the device had been found. So he actually went in to the gathering being held and the IVU speech being given. And following the speech, he marched with the marchers on the new route that the police had been routed. He told us that he brought his camera and was planning on taking pictures and actually planning to videotape the device exploding. He wanted to watch it happen over and over again. But since he was unable to, of course, effect his attack, he decided to take photos of people on the route. And so he could relive it later, which is his advantage. Near the end of our interview with Mr. Harper, he said he had 21 years left of his 32-year sentence. And he's staying in shape, and he's looking forward to getting out in his late 60s. But he informed myself and Detective Collins that they will be ready, and his work is not done. And he still is a soldier for the West Coast.
I think the thing that shocked me most about this whole thing is the level of hatred that must be in the heart of a perpetrator to do this. This took a long process to conceive it, build the device, plan the device, plan everything that went into it. Knowing this is brave, conservative, and to not care, to not that said, you know what, I should be doing this. This is important. Who knows? Maybe after 25 years of law enforcement, I find a job.
The case of Kevin Harper is a good example of extremism in all forms, and that's really the evil here. It takes many forms. It can be Islamic extremism, it can be whatever. It's an individual who lives at the fringe and then is willing to act violently to act out on whatever extremism he or she may hold. What I'm saying here is no difference. I think every member of the investigative team, and I think Joe Cleary and Joe Harrington shared this, Kevin Harper was committed to what he believed was his perverted cause and would have struck again, and perhaps even again, would be intercepted and stopped even after that first attack. Clearly, this was a committed individual that had crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back. He was
My takeaway from this was how well everybody worked together. Members of the JTF, first came out and assisted and found violent evidence. Spokane and City Bomb Squad is preserving the evidence that allowed us to catch our prey against the city police that found the device that marched in. He called 911. He's a true hero in this case. He put his own life out there. He maintained his distance from the only 23 yards from the device, which probably would have killed him had it to save others from walking too close to him and stay out there as long as they could. So the hero story is him and his fellow employees that found the device and put themselves in harm's way.
basically sticking a radio antenna inside the bomb.
आठ को मिसाल था ना
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
तो 8 कतो है 8 मतलब कि एक सीजन में 10 होते थे 15 देते 15 सीजन में तो कितना लेवल तक एक सीजन में 15 पॉइंट मान के लो 15 हम तो कत्ता पार्टी कर 3 एक 4 एक 5 को मिशन बाकी था आई देखिए फर्स्ट मिशन कंप्लीट किया चल रहे हैं मर भी
Islamic Jihad Union sees an opportunity in these German jihadists. Der Hintergrund, dass Deutschland sich aus der Sicht der Terroristen beteiligt an Aktionen gegen Muslime. The German terrorists, known as the Sourdough Cell, acquired chemicals for explosives.
Damit hätte man bestimmt einige Lastwagen wahrscheinlich
Es hätte etwa eine Sprengkraftaufnahme oder TNT entsprochen und man hätte hunderte von Toten.
With intelligence gained from the United States National Security Agency, German authorities launched Operation Halbert to foil the terror plot.
500 police officials are said to have participated in this operation. It was the biggest operation of German counterterrorism ever.
True stories of the world's deadliest terror plots, with exclusive access to leading counterterrorism experts and the elite agents whose
होशियारी कर रहे हो नहीं होशियारी क्या समझते हो मैं क्या समझते हो हम लोग बैठे हुए हैं यहाँ तुमको तो ऐसे ना मारेंगे तुम तड़को इधर बेटे हम सरवाइव कर रहे हैं क्या हुआ बोलो वो तुम्हारा टीममेट आ गया चल बाकी यहाँ से पता है पूरा पेलम पाली करे करता है पूरा पेलम पाली करे हम लोग नहीं है बोलने वाला नहीं
Excellent work. Enemies ahead.
Marked a location. Enemies ahead! Enemies ahead!
Stop the attacks. On this episode of Terrorists and Close Calls, I'm your way for German jihadists and international terror networks to help facilitate attacks in Germany. German security services launch full-scale surveillance
the danger is more pronounced today than it has been before. Simply because there are so many Germans now who go and join terrorist organizations.
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
We do have a very clear separation of intelligence services and police authorities.
The BKA is responsible for terrorist investigations. The BFD is responsible for domestic intelligence, including terrorism. The BND is the Foreign Intelligence Agency of Germany. A strong relationship between German and United States intelligence agencies is critical in the fight against terrorism. Mark Kelman is the former chief of counterintelligence at the CIA.
With terrorist organizations and private places, they overrule the strength of United States. So we work closely with all American firms on not trafficking and the Germans in particular, partnership on a long-term relationship.
Many countries rely on the United States National Security Agency for its foreign intelligence capabilities in detecting communications between operatives in the West and the Al-Qaeda core. It's this close relationship and shared intelligence that first alerts Germany to a possible terror threat.
Da ist halt angefangen, dass ein Signal abgefangen wurde, wahrscheinlich von der NSA, also von den amerikanischen Sicherheitsbehörden, die ja genau diese E-Mails abfangen und sie dann weitergeleitet haben an die Deutschen.
Peter Neumann is a professor of security studies at King College in London and director of the International Center for the Study of Radicalization.
Es geht hier um E-Mail wahrscheinlich, die abgefangen wurde und die geschickt wurde zwischen Europa, zwischen Deutschland und den Staatsgebieten in Pakistan.
The NSA discovered communications between a German national named Prince Gelowitz and operatives in Pakistan describing a plan for a potential terror plot.
Steht da nur eine Person dahinter oder sind da andere Leute noch mit daran beteiligt? Wie groß ist diese Gruppe und mit wem hat der Verdächtige noch zu tun?
The alert on Gelowitz quickly leads to other suspects.
It didn't take them long to identify the 4 potential terrorists. And that's when Operation Alberich started. That was the code name of an operation, which then lasted for nearly a year.
All suspects had communicated with each other and their handlers in Pakistan via email accounts, leaving messages in draft folders.
That was standard procedure in the early years of internet jihadism. When you use draft folders and believe that security authorities will find out.
The suspected terrorists are nicknamed the Sauerland Cell by federal authorities because of the region some of them are from.
The Sauerland Cell had 4 members, 1 and 2 ringleaders. These were Kurzhelic and Ali Yilmaz. Ali Yilmaz was the one who knew more about Islam in the beginning, at least he thought. So he saw himself as the leader of this small group.
Yilmaz had been born in Turkey, then moved to Langen, a small town south of Frankfurt, when he was 14 years old. Fritz Gelowitz is a German-born convert to Islam.
I think the basic organizing principle of the Sauerland group was competition between 2 leaders. And the leader of the group was Daniel Schneider, quite an intelligent young man, and in contrast to the others in the group, he had gone through military training. He had served 5 months as an airborne pioneer in the Sauerland region, and these units that are trained over there are considered to be special forces, elite units in the German military. Number 4 was Attila Zilk, a Turkish citizen from Ulm, probably somebody who followed Fritz Gelowitz as a sort of elder brother figure. We have a group of 2 ethnic Turks who speak Turkish and who still hold Turkish nationality, and 2 converts, Fritz Gelowitz and Daniel Schneider. Surveillance of the Sauerland Forum quickly assumed the German authorities flats, which is possible in extreme circumstances, and observation teams following them 24/7.
German authorities discovered that the Sauerland Cell are followers of Salafism, a fundamentalist ideological movement within Sunnism, which follows a return to the original ways of Islam.
The Islam seminaries were an instrument for Salafists in Germany to make connections. In the early 2000s, the scene was quite fragmented, and through these Islam seminaries, the whole jihadist milieu in Germany got more interconnected.
Ja, das Multikulti-Haus in Ulm war seit Jahren schon eine Anlaufstelle für Dschihadisten in Deutschland, wahrscheinlich einer der wichtigsten Dreh- und Angelpunkte der dschihadistischen Szene in Deutschland. Das war ein Ort, wo Propaganda betrieben wurde, wo Leute rekrutiert wurden, aber wo eben auch Leute in den Kampf geschickt wurden.
The multicultural house became the nucleus for the cell, as well as a new faction of German jihadists, led by a charismatic Egyptian preacher named Yia Yusuf.
War eine charismatische Figur, es war ein Prediger aus Ägypten, der seit einigen Jahren schon in Deutschland war und der Salafismus gepredigt hat. Und zwar Salafismus der dschihadistischen Ausprägung, der ganz offensichtlich eine große Anziehungskraft gehabt hat auf Leute in der unmittelbaren Umgebung.
Yahya Yusuf was a burgeoning authority by that time because he had supported the jihad in Bosnia in the early 1990s. He was the chief jihadist thinker in southwestern Germany at that time. Fritz Gelowitz was one of his disciples.
The Multicultural House published a monthly magazine called Think Islamic. Gelowitz, Yilmaz, and Selleck worked on the publication.
des Multikulti-Hauses in Ulm. Und man darf nicht vergessen, das hat alles angefangen, noch bevor das Internet so wichtig wurde, wie es heute ist. Und Denk Islamisch war quasi das Sprachrohr für dieses Multikulti-Haus. Und es war ein wichtiges Instrument der Propaganda, der Rekrutierung. Es war ein wichtiges Instrument, die eigene Gedankenwelt an andere Leute weiter zu transportieren. In diesem Magazin ging es um salafistische Inhalte, religiöse Inhalte, aber es ging eben auch darum, die Leute ranzuführen, an das Kämpfen daran, diese Inhalte auch militant umzusetzen.
As German authorities investigate the Sauerland cell's connection to the multicultural house, they discovered more details describing a domestic terror plot.
Also es ging um verschiedene Ziele, man hat verschiedene Ziele im Laufe der Zeit diskutiert, aber offensichtlich haben sie sich am Ende dazu entschieden, den amerikanischen Luftstützpunkt in Rammstein anzugreifen. Das war ein Ziel in Deutschland, das aber gleichzeitig natürlich internationale Bedeutung gehabt hat. Das war ein amerikanisches Ziel in Deutschland.
Along with the American targets, the Sauerland cell also discussed placing bombs in cars and around popular nightclub districts in Germany. German authorities also discovered that the cell had not only been communicating with Al-Qaeda operatives in Pakistan, but traveled to the region as Islamic jihadists 2 years earlier.
Among German Muslims, the fight in Chechnya was far more prominent than the fight in Afghanistan.
At the Higher Regional Court of Düsseldorf, is considered one of Germany's leading authorities on terrorism.
Tschetschenien war damals sozusagen der erste Anlaufpunkt. Man bekam hier im westlichen Fernsehen und auch in der Berichterstattung etwas mit über den großen Kampf der Muslime gegen die Russen. Und Tschetschenien war auch nicht so weit. Und deshalb war es auch so ein gewisser Anziehungspunkt, zumal gerade das, was man aus Tschetschenien hörte, für kampfbereite junge Leute besonders attraktiv war, weil doch mit besonderer Härte gekämpft wurde. Und man konnte gerade im Internet sehr viele Filme sehen über den Kampf in Tschetschenien. Und zwar Erfolgsfilme, wie eben die Russen dort in Sprengfallen bekämpft wurden, wie Panzer in die Luft gejagt wurden. Und das übte auf junge Dschihadisten in Deutschland einen besonderen Reiz aus.
Gelowitz and the other members of the Sauerland cell traveled to Istanbul to link up with Chechen fighters, but joining the fight is more difficult than they anticipate.
The Germans didn't have any military training. The rebel units usually demanded would have some kind of training in order to
military training isn't the group's only obstacle.
Most German jihadists do not speak Arabic. Why? Because Germany has large Jews and Kurds who do not speak Arabic. They could not join an organization like Al-Qaeda, neither in Pakistan nor in Iraq. That is why when the group started to look out for alternatives.
The Sauerland cell traveled to Damascus, the capital of Syria, where they hoped to find real military training, and from there follow a route they would pave for future German jihadists heading into Pakistan. They traveled from Syria to Turkey, to a city in Iran called Zahedan, 25 miles from the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, a gateway for Al-Qaeda and other extremists to travel in and out of the region. The cell's first stop in Zahedan is the Maki Mosque.
The mosque is, as far as I know, the biggest and most important Sunni mosque in Iran, and this is where they usually meet.
The German cell are met by an Uzbek logistics officer who offers to introduce them to leaders of the Islamic Jihad Union. The Islamic Jihad Union, or IJU, is a group out of Uzbekistan in 2002. Made up of mainly Uzbek members, it also recruits and Al-Qaeda. They are responsible for the suicide bombings of the Israeli and U.S. embassies in Tashkent, Uzbekistan's capital, in 2004. The group relocated their headquarters to Waziristan, the tribal region of Pakistan, after the attacks.
War auch zunächst regional tätig, hat aber dann sich verschworen dem globalen Dschihad.
In the late 1990s, they had fought over there and they had contacts.
Yahya Yusuf, the multicultural house preacher, may have been one of those contacts.
The connection between Yahya Yusuf and the multicultural house was a center for recruitment for Chechnya. So I still believe that this godfather of the German jihad.
After a year of trying to join the jihadist fight with no success, the Sauerland Four jump on the opportunity to join the IJU and agree to travel to Waziristan. These nomads are the first to arrive in Iradi, a mountainous area perfect for guerrilla warfare. Schneider and Selling arrived soon after in training.
Es waren sowohl klassische Übungen im Feld, also das Vorrücken mit Militärschiffe von anderen, mit Panzerfäusten, mit ähnlichen großkalibrigen Waffen. Wir haben auch für gewisse schon Zeit war. Das, was wir schon besprochen haben, das ist hier machen darf, sind Einstellungen sein, also die Sachen, zu sagen, was weiter bedeutet. Also diese Formel sein, ganz wichtig, Sprengstoff, das Einweisen, das war auch von Sprengstoff, auch die unterschiedlichsten Formen von Sprengstoff zeigt, zu sagen, welche besonders wirksam sind, welche man in Deutschland dann
had taken the lead as point man in the cell, but with the move to Waziristan, the dynamics of the group begin to change.
This is a simulation game set in a virtual world and does not represent real life. Please play in moderation, take frequent breaks, and play responsibly.
With Yellowix named the new Amir, the cell gained knowledge and explosives and weaponry, but are having trouble acclimating to the harsh conditions of Waziristan.
Because we already had materials, he had that problem. He was seriously weak by his ability to digest by time.
Ich hatte die Erfahrung sehr eindruck, dass alle 4 nachts wieder nicht vorhanden waren, die sind weiter runtergefahren. Also die war schlecht.
Thousands of foreign fighters who have traveled to the region end up dying either in battle or in
The relationship between the Germans and the leadership seems to have been a personal one. The leader of the IJU, Galalov, regularly was sick, even visited him and cooked food for him and so on.
Proving less than desirable fighters, the IJU see another opportunity in the German cell.
The IJU decided not to use that in battle or only small skirmishes in Afghanistan, but rather use them to perpetrate an attack in their own country.
IJU leaders asked the people to perpetrate an attack in Germany.
Der Hintergrund, dass Deutschland sich aus der Sicht der Terroristen beteiligt an Aktionen gegen Muslime, also gegen Glaubensbrüder. Das ist so der Hintergrund. Und beim Sauerlandverfahren spielt eine große Rolle, dass Deutschland sich an den ISAF-Aktionen beteiligt hat. Das war so ein Punkt, den man als Argument genommen hat, um auch hier in Deutschland Anschläge verüben zu können. Oder zu bauen.
They thought about it for a while and then decided that this was probably the best idea.
The Sauerland cell will return to Germany and conduct attacks on their home turf. But first, they are taught how to use industrial detonators and how to make homemade bombs out of highly concentrated hydrogen peroxide.
The IJU first wanted to hit an American target because of the American war in Afghanistan. It wanted to prompt Western forces to leave the country. Secondly, it wanted to fight his country and use their embassy here in Berlin. And thirdly, the IJU wanted the Germans to withdraw their troops from Afghanistan as well. That is why it insisted that the Sauerland 4 perpetrated an attack on American, Uzbek and German targets if possible.
Equipped with the knowledge of how to build explosives and a list of targets, the Sauerland cell travels separately via many intricate routes through Iran back to Germany.
I think the travels of the Sauerland group show that German authorities in 2004 didn't really have a clue about what was happening in the emerging jihadist scene. And they knew about Fitzgerald, but they didn't realize that he left the country. The problem starts with Fitzgerald and the others being in Pakistan.
I need
for
consumables.
That is normally something that German authorities should be aware of, especially because these young people had frequented places like Multicultural House before.
It's around this time that the German authorities are first alerted by the NSA about the terror cell and the plot to attack targets in Germany. The BFV conducts 24/7 surveillance on the group, listening to their conversations between cell members.
Adam Yilmaz, he talked about his vision of the attack in conversations with the other group members, and he expected to kill about 150 persons or more. He talked about the German 9/11. These people, and especially Yilmaz and Village, they were quite ambitious in their terrorist planning. They wanted to attack Americans, but they also planned to attack Germans in major population centers.
Die letzte Überlegung war vor allen Dingen gepusht von Yilmaz, Anschläge auf amerikanische Pubs in Hanau zu begehen. Da hatte man zunächst Sorge, dass die Sprengsätze, die man bastelte, möglicherweise nur ausreichen würden, die Mauern dieser Pubs zu zerstören und zu wenig Menschenopfer hervorrufen. Und das war zuletzt so die Überlegung, wechseln wir von der Idee Pubs zu Diskotheken, weil man meinte, Diskotheken seien ein lohnendes Anschlagsziel.
Each of the three plotters plan to park their cars filled with explosives in front of their targets, 2 nightclubs, and the Ramstein air base, and detonate all 3 at the same time.
And they try to enhance the effectiveness although that might sound cynical, the effectiveness of the bomb by putting nails and other hard materials into the bomb itself in order to increase lethality of the attack. The wounds that are caused by these kinds of bombs are sometimes extremely cruel. If you have 50 or 100 nails in your body, you are on the list of people who have been wounded. But of course, you will have to live with the effects of this bomb attack for the rest of your life. And this is probably something that we should have expected from the Sauron 4 as well.
With constant round-the-clock surveillance, members of the cell become suspicious that they're being watched. On one occasion, Selig realizes he's being followed while driving his car.
Irgendwann haben sie aber offensichtlich die Nerven verloren und sind dann auf der Straße angehalten mit ihrem Auto, sind zurückgelaufen zu dem Polizeiauto und haben die Reifen durchstochen. Quasi als Zeichen an die Polizei, wir wissen, dass ihr uns beobachtet, wir sind uns dessen bewusst und macht trotzdem weiter, denn es ist unsicher.
Taken by surprise, the agents in the police car simply allow Selig to walk away.
There was still a major debate going on in German counterterrorism circles. The police would normally opt for early arrests so that nothing can happen. Because you always have to expect that there are being wanted. They might simply grab a knife and attack innocent bystanders somewhere on the street. So there is a danger to the other approach, that is more the intelligence approach. They want to know more.
Wanting to gain more intelligence about the cell and the IJU, the German investigation agencies decide to wait it out.
The Sauron 4 wanted to build a bomb on the base of TNT tribes. It's a very popular explosive among European jihadists because parasite, which is basically all you can buy it in shops. It's used to reach convicts. The guys didn't really look like terrorists, but they looks like me. And so nobody suspected that these four were actually connected to the parasite in order to use.
The cell rents a garage close to the town of Friedensberg, in the Black Forest region where they store the chemicals and other bomb components. The cell is feeling the pressure from the IJU to launch the attacks.
The IJU always wanted the attacks to take place. And it was not satisfied for the organization that its back to Germany during 1936 would not be ready to pass some justice. Part of the war was the IJU itself. The organization promised to provide the office of the defense. Then they joined the second
wenn die Anschläge durchgeführt